I want to know right now, you've said all this, you've translated the thing, right? You've translated what she says. So here's what's happening right now in schools. Okay. Here's what's happening right now in schools. And so I want to know, I want to know why is this, I want to know why this is okay for a middle school teacher to teach right now in schools, because this is exactly what's happening in almost every school in all 50 states through something called culturally responsive teaching. It's a delivery system of critical race theory ideology. So here is a middle school teacher.
This is my breakthrough moment. So I taught middle school for a long time, and I taught English. And in a particular part of my own racial identity development, I thought it was super important to burst the bubble of the privileged kids that were my students. And part of that was showing them the harsh realities that nobody was talking about. And I thought I was really bringing truth into the space by really talking about the stories of struggle and oppression and how people of color have been oppressed in this country. And I made sure to have texts to represent that and talked about it and had students research their own understandings of different moments in time of oppression. And it wasn't, I never located myself as being white in this whole discussion, just as the teacher, right? And thinking of myself, that whiteness as being invisible. I'm not white, I'm just Jenna, I'm just Miss CW, I'm the teacher. Instead of understanding that me as a white person saying these things has an impact. And on top of that, when I say bursting the bubble, really I'm talking about white students. And even though there were only a few students of color in my classes, that learning wasn't for them, right? It was just for those white students. And so I really prided myself on making sure my kids got that social justice foundation. And there were some good parts too, right? It wasn't all bad. I had them practicing activism, which I think is a skill that students need to learn that they aren't necessarily taught in school. And if you aren't happy with something, how do you make a breakthrough? How do you do something different? And so there were good things and bad things, but mostly I was really focused on making sure those white students understood racial oppression. And what I did unknowingly was reinforce this binary again of good and bad, that white people only ever show up as being named as white when we are talking about being oppressors, right? And this is part of the controversy that's going on in the country right now, that we're making students feel guilty and ashamed. And so I'm going to say that I probably played a hand in that at one point. And I also provided my students opportunities to ask questions and talk about things. And so what I came to understand is that my student of color, through their behavior, sometimes they would just look really upset and I wouldn't understand why. Sometimes I would see that they were visibly shaken. And sometimes I had the relationship with those students where they would let me know that I at least need to give them a heads up when I plan a lesson like that, right? And sort of, they were feeling ambushed. And in certain circumstances, I've had students of color leave the room. They were just so uncomfortable. They couldn't talk to me. They had to leave. And again, I thought this was sort of a necessary evil.
So you think that's okay, man? This is a middle school. Now think about it, middle school, right? You're like 10, 11, 12, 13, right? Talking about oppressor, white students of color feel uncomfortable. You know how many letters, how many messages we get from parents where white students feel like they can't say boo? You think white students can go to her and say, hey, I feel uncomfortable. She'll go, there you go. There's your unconscious white supremacy. There's your unconscious. You gotta do like you said earlier, it's uncomfortable, man. Come on, 11-year-old, it's uncomfortable, but you got to put through that. You tell me, you think that's right?
I don't see anything wrong with it. So I'd like to hear what you think is wrong with it. Because so far, I don't really know.
So I think that's the thing, right? I'm not going to convince you that's wrong, and you're not going to convince me.
I just want you to tell me what you think is wrong with it.
I think if you're not an activist and you're not looking through the entire country through the lens of race, any normal person would see that there's something very wrong with that. This is a teacher in middle school.
Listen,
now let me ask you.
I want to know what you personally think is wrong with what she was talking about. First of all, she was only talking about her own personal experience. She mostly talked about herself and what she did and her reflections on it. And
in her classroom.
Right. correct, but you know,
This is a middle schooler, man.
I'm
This is a
aware.
middle school question.
I heard you the other three times.
Okay.
So like, yeah,
And
I
you're
know
okay.
it's a middle
And see,
school.
you're okay. And this is where I want to get at. When you're talking about, oh, we just want to teach real history. We just want to teach that there's oppression. You're okay with this. You're okay with a middle schooler in a government tax-paying public school teaching their white kids and black kids that.
Teaching them what? Like that there's that there was a racial hierarchy that still has a legacy and impact on people in the present. It's just a fact.
In an English class, man. In
Listen,
an English class.
brother, I teach English. All right, like I'm a teacher. So like, let me tell you something. When people write, all right, and they're writing about themselves, they're gonna write about the things that are important to them. We don't instruct people to write about certain subject matters. People choose to write about it. So people choose to write about their racialization. They choose to write about their experience with their sexuality. They choose it. And then we, as the teachers, we can either shut them down and say, hey, no, you shouldn't be thinking about yourself. Just let's shut you down and not have a conversation about it and just focus on the pure mechanical grammar and forget about like the content of what you wrote.
So when do you
Or
teach
we
success?
can actually, you know,
When
treat
do
them
you
like a
teach success?
human and look at what they wrote, evaluate it with them and like discuss it. And so we've learned that that is the better way to approach education, is to actually allow people to be their authentic selves.